everybody. It's There's a Will Time, the show that you love to watch, but you have to find it first. At any rate, here is Nicholas Richardson with me. Of course, you have to find it. It's on the internet.
I know where to look. That's a key thing.
You have to find it because it's on the internet, right?
It is.
It's not. You're not forced to watch it on cable or something.
No, you're not.
Not
Mine
yet.
is.
Not yet.
I'm on cable.
You must take over cable. What do you think?
Yeah.
At any rate, we're talking about Warsaw. We were talking about Warsaw in the last installment, and you said, "May I encapsulate what you said?
Yes.
May I put the words back into your mouth?
Please do.
Is that okay? All right.
Your show.
So you said to me, that's very nice of you to remember.
It is, yes.
You said
hard sometimes, but there we are.
It's my show, and my show only. Yeah. You said that the top 3 places you would take a visitor to Warsaw were the Old Town, the Warsaw Uprising Museum. I'm writing this down just to exercise my hand. And the third one was the you call it the embankment, but it's really the river.
Yes, but it's the
river walk.
It is, but it's that newly renovated.
It doesn't have a name, does it? Does it have a name?
Well, it does.
By the Wisła.
No, it does have a particular name, but I can't remember.
I can't remember what it is. Let's call it the embankment because it sounds very British and very you.
Yes. Well,
right?
I am British and I am me, so that's hardly surprising, isn't it?
It's hardly surprising. Stop doing this Prince Charles impression.
Can
I tell you my 3?
Yes, please do.
Exactly the same as yours.
Extraordinary.
No, it's not true. I have a different 3.
Yeah.
Okay, I should add something because I think your choices are excellent.
Thank you.
And I like all 3 of them. I'm not so keen on the embankment, but I realized that we were there recently.
We were.
When I took you to meet my friend, the legendary Aussie Bill.
Exactly.
From the Gold Coast.
Indeed, and we had a glass of beer on a boat, which is rather nice.
We had a glass of beer on a boat. And so that was fun. That was fun. But it's not something I do all the time. I like to ride my bike on the embankment.
Yes, well, there's some great cycle paths, of course.
And you do too. Yeah. I would say all of those 3 things are great, but I like to go to Łazienki Park.
Yes.
I love to walk there. I think it's a great spot. I think it's one of the finest parks that I've ever seen in a city center.
It's
I have to tell you, it is. And even in London, and nothing really to rival.
No, having the palace on the water is a particularly fine example of architecture.
And you can see the Belvedere Palace when you're far away.
Exactly.
You have the nice restaurant, the Belvedere restaurant.
Of course,
so,
yes.
And they really have renovated all the palaces there. Yeah. So it's pretty amazing.
It is a very nice park, actually.
Yeah, yeah. But I haven't seen, they have a lot of peacocks, but I haven't seen them lately. No. What happened to them?
I don't know. They weren't there last time, I was wondering.
It is peacockless.
Maybe they're hiding, and maybe it's too hot. Maybe they were gone for shade.
And they would screech, you know?
They would screech.
The screech of the wild peacock.
There's an interesting thing about peacocks, actually.
What's interesting about a peacock?
That peacocks,
besides, I mean, they're
serious. You'll think I'm making this up, but it's not entirely. I'm not making this up. They're a very snobbish bird. So if you were to buy some peacocks for your back garden, you'd find they would migrate to the nearest large house.
They would migrate?
They will move along. Yeah, you can't keep peacocks in your garden because they go and they find the biggest house because they like.
They like big houses.
They like big houses, yeah.
So they're just big show-offs
exactly.
with all those feathers and everything.
Exactly.
All that screeching.
These are the sort of birds they are. So.
Yeah, they're nice. I mean, kids love them.
Oh well, they're very. If they fan the tail, the male, they're very.
It's like a bird of paradise, don't they look like that? The females are rather dull, aren't they?
The females are rather dull. Yes, that's true in quite a lot of animal species.
Is that
not human?
Does the men have to attract?
Yeah, so they need this exotic plumage.
I don't know anything about zoology, but
that generally is the case. That's why because the males have to attract the females.
Is that what it is?
Okay. So that's why they tend to be more exotic.
I'm going to make a note of that.
Yes.
What did you say? The males have to. No, forget it. No, let's move on. And so Łazienki Park would be one of mine.
That's a good choice.
And to add. And I would say, after that, I would say Żoliborz.
Żoliborz, yeah.
Just to hang around.
It's nice, Żoliborz. There's a nice little park in Żoliborz as well, of course.
Yeah, and it's near the forest.
Near the forest, yes.
There's a lot of
and it's quite. It gives you a feel for sort of a typical Warsaw suburb.
But they also have some good pre-war streets, like Wieniawski Street is very nice.
I lived in Żoliborz for a while on such a street.
Where did you live?
Czarneckiego.
Oh, that's a famous street. Yeah.
Famous street, yes.
By
and
the
of course,
square.
there you have the church where Father Popiełuszko was the priest.
That's also true.
So that's, again, it's another reason we're going to visit Żoliborz.
Yeah, Father Popiełuszko, who was, of course, martyred
Exactly.
Under communism, he was
So
murdered.
Joliboche is an interesting... But you're right, some of the architecture, if you wander around the streets and the villas...
It's actually where the
Very nice.
Warsaw Uprising started.
Accidentally, yes.
Accidentally. I talked about that in one of the
yes,
travel shows.
I read that in another book, and of course I met the man who accidentally started it in one of my shows.
What was his name?
Julian Kulski.
Right, you did a series of interviews with him.
And they were preparing for the Warsaw Uprising.
What was his name again?
Julian Kulski.
Julian
Kulski.
Kulski.
Yes.
Okay, so it's worth the folks looking that up.
Yeah, they can find that on YouTube. He's a very interesting man, actually.
Yeah.
He was 15 when it broke out. But
Amazing.
he was in Joliboche, and he lived in Joliboche, and they were fighting. And they were moving some weapons around in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And accidentally they came across some Germans. And so firing started. So he sort of jumped the gun by a couple of hours. But a very...
It's incredible, isn't it?
It's incredible to think that some
he lived through that, and he's here to talk about it now. It's
exactly.
amazing.
Exactly. He lived in Joliboche. The family lived in Joliboche before the war. He lived in Joliboche during the war, and of course in the Warsaw Uprising, as you know, the various areas of Warsaw became slightly separated from each other, and he fought in the Warsaw Uprising in Joliboche as well. Yeah. So as he said...
So the uprising started in Joliboche on
and
the 1st
that's where
of August.
the first shooting...
And it was the last, I believe the last area
It was one of the last
surrender.
yes. It was
if
one
not
of the,
the last.
Yes. Mokotów was quite late as well.
Yeah. It was.
But they were lucky in Joliboche and
Mokotów
Mokotów that by the time they surrendered, the Germans had agreed that they would treat the Home Army fighters as prisoners of war, and they wouldn't just wantonly murder the civilian population. Whereas the folk of Wola, which is a suburb to the west, which is where the real action against the uprising started, of course, this was actually horrific. And the German forces moved in, and they just slaughtered everybody. It wasn't street-to-street, hand-to-hand fighting, the German army against the Polish Home Army. It was just mass extermination, essentially. I mean, when you read about it, it's very harrowing, very sad. They would shoot men, women, and children were all just shot. Or they'd throw hand grenades into cellars where they knew people were hiding.
Yeah.
I mean, when we read it now and in books, it is something that is so horrific. It's hard for us actually to really comprehend it. But it must have been, well, terrible for people who lived through it. Really. When some people, sorry, don't to dominate this show, the Warsaw Uprising, but when some of the people did escape from Wola and got to the old town, which was the next area which the Germans moved on to, folk who were living in the old town could not believe the stories they were told by those who'd escaped from Wola. They just couldn't believe that albeit in wartime, that sort of thing would actually happen in a European capital city.
I can see it made a huge impression on you.
Well, it did, because you don't often get to... we filmed...
I need to move on in the time we've got left.
Yes.
I mean, because we can pick this up later.
Yeah.
But, and you've spoken so eloquently about it in your series.
Thank you.
But I'd say my last will be markets in Warsaw.
Yes.
Just going to the markets, because it's amazing how much fresh produce, et cetera,
Well,
et
the
cetera.
fresh produce here is very good, actually.
You know, it is. It
and
comes right in from the local farms.
And it benefits from the fact that because of the history, a lot of Polish agriculture is still not covered in massive fertilizers.
Well, they still have a...
Stuff is fresh, it still tastes of
It's like the French have a lot of small farms.
Yes, they do. And people bring it in from the countryside.
That's right. And they bring it right
fresh
into town.
And things like...
People can't believe it when I send them
pictures. Things you don't think about, like if you find sort of people that made their own honey out in the country. That really tastes completely different from commercial honey. Really,
and you know what I'll throw in as well? Because we're running to time now. Checking out these Georgian bakeries, not Polish, but still worth checking out. The Georgians have made a huge move here. Georgia, of course, the home of wine.
Yes.
A great country.
Indeed.
And they have created a lot of Georgian bakeries around town and restaurants.
Okay.
I mean, they suddenly have burst upon the scene in the last few months, like 3 or 4 months, for the summer season. And I would say check out the Georgian bakeries, which are fast becoming a part of the culture. So there's a few things that you could do. You could go to Łazienki Park, you go and check out Żoliborz, go and check out the markets, and of course, you hit the history with the Old Town, the Warsaw Uprising, and the embankment. Okay, stay with us for more on the next episode of There's a Will. I was going to say Poland Daily Travel. Of There's a Will.
There's a Will. Traveling.
Talking about travel. Talking about travel with Nick Richardson. Okay, we'll look for you in the next episode.